In astrology today, Mercury has become something of a bogeyman. A boogeyman? A bogeyman? I don't know. You know what I mean. Because of everyone being terrified of the phenomenon of Mercury retrograde. But in the context of an astrological chart, what's in a Mercury placement? Well, I'll tell you. We're going to start by giving you the short answer about what Mercury represents in a chart. So straight away, short answer, Mercury represents the way you communicate, the way you think, and the way that you network with others. That's it. That's as short as it gets. If you want to get some more information, it's about to get very interesting. Stick around for the long answer. So let's begin by considering the physical astronomical planet of Mercury. So in our solar system, it is the smallest astronomical planet. It's also the fastest moving. It has the shortest orbit around the sun because it's the closest one to the sun. And all of these are aspects or characteristics which are reflected in the myths that surround the character of Mercury. So Mercury's Greek name is Hermes, and I think a lot of people are more familiar with that name and the myths of Hermes. So for example, the winged helmet, the winged sandals, which he got when he became the messenger of the gods. So in this way, it represents how we communicate. That lines up really well because, of course, what is being a messenger except communicating? You're basically facilitating two people talking. Except today, we don't have Mercury, we've got phones, right? But we still do communicate. We communicate more than ever. We are talking 24/7. I am. Don't know about you, but all of that is covered by and colored by your Mercury placement. If we take a second to consider communication a little level deeper, what it really is at its essence, communication is an exchange, right? It's an exchange of ideas. Mercury also covers other kinds of exchanges. Mercury has got a lot to do with commerce and trade and so on. And one of those things that's very interesting is if you consider old trade routes before obviously roads and modern transport links were developed, there was just a kind of road that people would walk down, and there would be resting points that you would get there that grew up, kind of sprung up around the trade routes, probably where there was some kind of water. And of course people would rest there, and then they'd meet other people. People going this way, people going that way, from different places to different places. And what they would do, of course, is that they would exchange thoughts and ideas and stories and myths and experiences and all these kind of things. And a lot of these spots, of course, grew into towns and then eventually cities that we have today, as well as taverns. It's an interesting thing that in a lot of like Lord of the Rings and stories like that in high fantasy, Skyrim and all these kind of things, a tavern is a place where you go to get information, right? It's where people go and they talk. Of course they drink, but they talk, and I think that all of that says quite a lot and has a lot to do with the planet Mercury. Broadly, everything I've just mentioned has to do with networking, right? Because it's linking. It's not just an exchange, but really it's forging a link between one thing and another, one person, and even one place to one person, or whatever it might be. And in this way, Mercury isn't just communication, it's your ability to form these connections with people, and also your ability to form connections between other people, because Mercury as a messenger god was really forming connection between two other people. He was very much the middleman. Something else that is shown by your Mercury placement is your experience in early education, and most importantly in literacy. Mercury is very much the god of writing, and the other avatars of these similar archetypes, including Thoth, for example, in ancient Egypt. He was the god who invented writing in the first place. Your early education, you don't just go to learn though. This is where you learn how to be sociable with other people in your immediate environment, and that's very important. That is, Mercury is to do with the kind of things that are close by, like journeying and interchanging with things, but it tends to be quite close by. In primary or early education, what you're really doing is you're essentially taking in information. That seems like a very obvious thing to say, but what I mean is that in an early age we usually aren't great at developing any kind of deeper analysis or being aware of the broader ramifications of any information that we're taking in. It's like primary education is more about just learning facts, which is interesting to note. That's a difference between Mercury and Jupiter, in that Mercury is about learning facts, it's about knowledge, and Jupiter is the one that interprets that and adds wisdom into the mix. Another strong mercurial archetype is that of the trickster, a trickster god, in that he's imbued with a youthful sense of fun, and that very much can come out if you're through your Mercury placement in your chart, can show your sense of fun, especially if it's a little bit little bit devious. There's a couple of figures that cover this really well. Peter Pan is one, and Peter Pan, it's interesting, he literally flies if you consider Mercury with his winged sandals and so on. Similar thing. Michael Scott from The Office, he has a very immature sense of humour, and he likes to play some pranks and so on. And Bart Simpson, even, all the pranks that he used to play, kind of a very mercurial figure. And interestingly, I think you consider his skateboard, because not quite, but almost, because he's not on the ground really and he's kind of floating. It's kind of like a winged sandal vibe, right? Even something like the crew of Jackass, like their sense of humor, that whole thing is a very mercurial sense of humor. The thing about being forever young, that kind of thing. The trickster god thing though comes out a lot with the retrograde pattern, and I think that maybe that's one of the reasons why the Mercury retrograde is so feared, is because that we understand that it's the trickster side of Mercury that's coming out. Actually, even in the myths of Hermes, one of the very first things that Hermes did after he was born was that he played a prank on his brother Apollo, in that he stole his horses, and he had this whole thing where he took the horses away and tied a load of leaves behind them so they would cover the tracks and so on, so Apollo wouldn't know where they were and so on. And because of that, he ended up becoming the patron god of thieves, right? Which I think is interesting to note. In that you can consider that the lack of morality of the intellect, right? The intellect is neutral. It just thinks things, it just observes and it sees things and so on. It's not making a judgment call, which once again comes much more under the remit of Jupiter rather than Mercury. So just one more thing, I mentioned youth a second ago. Jung, in his writings, he wrote about the puer or the puella aeternus. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Basically, the part of us that never grows up, or a person who never matures in some way or another. I think we've all got parts of us, our inner child or whatever it might be, which never really become an adult and that we never grow out of. A great example I've just mentioned a second ago would be Peter Pan, right? The whole Neverland thing. He doesn't want to grow up. In fact, the whole Peter Pan thing is a story about not wanting to become an adult and accept responsibility and so on. Bart Simpson again could throw that in there. In that, it's been how many, 30 years or something before, I don't even know, of the Simpsons, and he's still the same age. What's that about? So I wonder, people who have a strong Mercury placement, perhaps they were something of a trickster, a little bit of a rapscallion when they were younger, but maybe they did grow out of it. And I'd be very interested if you want to leave a comment, let me know if that's you, if I'm talking about you. We even say though, like being childish, right? If someone's being childish, if they're an adult and they're playing pranks or whatever, the Mercury in your chart can really represent this for you. How mature or perhaps even boring you feel like you are sometimes, versus how you relate to your inner child. That's something that's definitely covered by Mercury placement. Alright, those are my thoughts on Mercury placement, short answer and long answer. Thank you very much for checking out the video. If you want to see more of this kind of astrology based content, you can let me know by hitting the like button, the subscribe button, and you can go even further, let me know with words by writing a comment. That help the algorithm and help the channel grow. So cheers, and hope to see you next time.